Hey there, it's Ollie from greenteaguru.co.uk, and today we're going to have a little chat about raw Pu Erh tea. Before we get into it, I would just like to say that I'm not here to advocate any specific type of Pu Erh tea, be it dry stored or humid stored, wet storage. I'm just here to express my own opinions on what I prefer and what you can expect on either side of the fence, so please make up your own mind. Now, raw Pu Erh tea is my favourite of all the teas. I find it absolutely fascinating for many reasons. I think that the flavours of the different Pu Erh teas you can get are so varying, and to be able to get so many different flavours from one type of tea, I just think is incredible. The second thing is the amazing aftertaste you can experience with a lot of these teas. Something that I never really thought about when I first got into tea. You normally look at front flavours, the flavour in your mouth when you first sip that tea. And you're still going to get that with Pu Erh tea. But what's really incredible is this amazing aftertaste you can experience. Beautiful, floral or fruity flavours that will linger on your palate for sometimes 10 minutes or more. It's just beautiful. Also, the returning sweetness you may experience on some very good cakes. It's just a phenomenon that I've never come across in anything else. I still remember it, the first cake I experienced it in was Misty Peaks 2013 Raw Autumn. And this particular cake, we do stock it by the way, it delivers this returning sweetness in spades. The front end flavour is very delicate. It's tea, so a very delicate front end flavour. That rolls back and the bitterness comes in, fades away to this wonderful, sweet flavour. It just astounded me when it first happened to me. I thought, what is this? What's going on? This is lovely. And it's just one of the amazing things about Pu Erh tea that I absolutely adore. Also, the different regions, just like wine, they offer different flavours, different complexities that make Pu Erh tea a real treat and a pleasure to explore, and it's never ending. There are just so many cakes out there to discover. It doesn't just stop with the regions. The years will also change, and that's down to weather conditions, how the crops were that year, etc. And also, very importantly, how the cakes were stored. So there are two different types of storage. There are wet storage and dry storage, and everywhere in between. Traditionally, wet storage cakes are from South China, particularly Hong Kong. These guys are extremely fond of wet storage cakes. You see, as soon as a Pu Erh cake has been produced, it's fermenting. It's still fermenting. It hasn't been put through the same Kilgreen process as other teas. So it's an ongoing fermentation process, and the storage that tea has been put through over time will eventually determine how it turns out. With wet storage, it's going to be left in a very humid environment, which means pretty accelerated aging. Cakes will age faster in a humid environment compared to a dry environment. A very dry environment, it could also be very detrimental to the further aging of that cake. The enzymes within the cake will simply perish and die, and you will not experience any further aging in that cake. So let's get back to wet storage. With wet storage flavours, I suppose you could expect maybe mushroom, forest floor, wood, and here's a good one for you: grandmother's closet. When I first heard that expression in Hong Kong, it made me laugh so hard. So you're going to get all these interesting, maybe musty and unique flavours from this particular type of storage. And it's not everyone's taste. You're going to experience most likely a wet storage taste on the first few infusions, and a lot of people just rinse that out. So infusions 1, 2 and 3, if you don't like that flavour, the very sort of, it's hard to explain, wet storage flavour, you can skip that part. So you just 5 seconds, 7 seconds, whatever, for the first 3 infusions. That will get rid of most of that initial wet storage taste. So that disappears, and you're left with the wonderful, unique flavours that wet storage cakes can bring. So, dry storage. Dry storage cakes, it's a compromise, I suppose, with wet storage. With wet storage, you're going to get that accelerated age taste. With dry storage, it's always going to age slower. And that's generally down to the lack of humidity, but temperature also plays a part, because as temperature rises, humidity in the air will also rise. Here in the UK, we're not that dry, we're not that humid, so it's a happy compromise, I think. What you're going to get with a dry storage cake, you're going to have less of that rapid aging. It's still going to age, but at a lot slower pace, possibly 50% or less. It really depends on where you live and what the conditions are. But what you're going to get with the aging is the initial flavours, the flowery notes, or whatever the initial signature taste of that tea is. It's going to hold on to that vitality and those flavours. They will change. They will definitely change over time, but ultimately the flavours will be different, and it's all down to your taste and what you prefer. I'll give you an example. I purchased the tong from Hong Kong in 2008 actually, 2008. Brought it back, it was extremely bitter, a lovely sort of floral flavour. I wasn't really into that cake at that time. I threw it at the back of a cupboard and forgot about it. I forgot about it for a long time. I got it out again 2013 and gave it a try. The initial floral notes had passed back somewhat. The flavours you were getting were sort of pine woods, but very more pine citrus than wood, I would suggest. I then, in 2014, decided to break up a cake. So I've got all the rest of my cakes are there. I broke up one cake, and when you break up a cake into smaller parts, it will age quicker. Now, it only took another 6 months over winter for the flavours to change drastically. So I got out my now loose raw cake, and from going from a very sort of pine citrus flavour, the loose cake had now developed a beautiful mushroom flavour, and the bitterness levels had jumped down by a huge margin. Just goes to show, aging in a drier environment can yield very good results. It just depends what you want out of your cake. You can age cakes anywhere. The only thing I would worry about is if you don't like the age taste, then you need to keep the humidity down or put it into storage which is drier. If you're in an environment which is very dry, extremely dry, then you need to be careful to bump up the humidity. Keep it at a level somewhere between sort of 60 and 70 maybe. There is no hard and fast rules, and you'll be okay. It's also important to mention that Pu Erh tea is a sponge for odours. So if you keep it in the kitchen, you're cooking lots of smelly food, it will over time absorb those flavours. If you keep it in a damp basement, it may well over time pick up those damp flavour tones. Something else that I find particularly interesting about raw Pu Erh tea, and ripe to some extent, that isn't so much publicised out there, is the fact that the taste can change over the seasons. So over here in the UK, in the summer, spring, early spring going to autumn, the cakes will change. So if you're drinking your Pu Erh tea over the winter time, it's pretty cold, and effectively the cakes are dormant. They are, all the enzymes have shut down. They're still alive. They're just sort of clinging on, if you like. They're hanging in there. The taste is still good, but what I find in the summertime in the UK, that's when the magic happens. The tea is alive, it's fermenting, and all the magic just comes out. So all these flavours, for example, I was telling you earlier about my Pu Erh cake I brought back from Hong Kong. In the spring, you tasted that citric pine. Mid to late summer, that green tasting sort of pine had now gone to a, it doesn't sound nice, but it was nice, a kind of a rotten sort of pine flavour, but it was very, very nice. Rotten's the wrong word, but mature pine, very, very hard to explain. Very, very, very nice. Also, the returning sweetness I was mentioning, I noticed that a lot more in the summer. So you're getting an explosion of activity within the cakes which happen at summertime. And interestingly, in Hong Kong it's the other way around. They prefer their tea in the wintertime than they do in the summertime. It's different seasons, different conditions, I suppose, but all very interesting stuff. Another thing that's interesting is traditionally with raw Pu Erh tea, people have sought the age as being a very important factor towards their tea and what they prefer to drink. But these days you're seeing a real change in the marketplace, especially with the West getting into Pu Erh tea more, and of course the Russians are very into their Pu Erh tea and have been for some time. Their tastes are more towards the newer flavours of the tea, and I think that's really down to the fact that after the Pu Erh boom a decade or so ago, it rendered many or all of the aged teas very expensive and out of the reach of many people. So people started drinking the newer tea much more frequently, and the taste, a lot of people have rediscovered that new 1-year-old, 5-year-old Pu Erh tea has its own interesting characteristics, and I'm definitely in that camp. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I've given you a better glimpse into the world of Pu Erh tea. Please take a look at my site, www.greenteaguru.co.uk, and until next time, keep on cupping.